So if you're trying to start at 40 and you decide to start adulting when you're 30, you've already lost out on all that time.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to 20s Talks, the unspoken truth. I hope everyone's doing okay. And on today's episode, I have a very special guest today. We have Jen Fontanilla, who is a TEDx slash international speaker, a certified money coach, and a best-selling author. And she has helped, countless creatives and professionals take control of their finances. So can everyone welcome Jen? Do you want to say a little thing about yourself, Jen? If you
Yes,
want.
thank you so much. I'm excited to be here with you. And yeah, you pretty much summed up the things that I do. And the only other thing that I would add is that one of the things that I love to focus on, even after being in the financial services industry for over 19 years, is I really love focusing on the money mindset. Because I think that that is the biggest component that we need to look at in order to understand our money stories and how our subconscious patterns and the way that we grew up around money, how all of those things affect our financial decisions today.
Yeah, it's very, yeah. I'm happy you said that because that's something I was going to touch on later on as well. But before we start, I just wanted to just start a little bit. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself? What kind of inspired you to become a, money mindset coach and a bit about your story?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, I wanted to be a doctor. So I have a background in biology. It really wasn't what I wanted to do. And so, as you mentioned, I did a TEDx. And in that TEDx, I briefly explained how I decided I got to go a different route. I really
Yeah.
knew that taking a creative route was where I wanted to be. And so I made that decision. So I was doing that for a few years. And then I got to this point where I said, I know how to make a lot of money, and I was in my early 20s at that time, and I didn't know anything other than how to save. And what I mean by that is I didn't know anything about investing. I didn't know anything about stocks and mutual funds and all these different things. And I felt like, gosh, I'm missing out on something. And so
Yeah.
that FOMO, and at that time it wasn't an acronym. We didn't have
Yeah.
FOMO back then. It was just like you were just feeling that you were not knowledgeable about something.
About,
So the
yeah.
FOMO acronym was actually much later, but it was exactly what I felt. I felt I am missing out on something. And so, long story short, that is what propelled me into becoming interested in going into financial services. I became a licensed insurance agent. I became a financial advisor. So there was, many years, over a decade, where I was transacting retirement funds, mutual funds, 529 plans, which is our version of savings for your college student and whatnot.
Yeah.
But it got to a point where I was just like, there's something missing again. And then it went into more looking at the subconscious patterns and the money mindset. So it was really this desire to understand, why are we making the decisions we're making? It was this desire to understand how money works, and why is it that so many people are failing in the area of personal finance, and then why are there other people who are completely thriving? And at the end of the day, what I realized was that we are just not having that access to that information and implementing it into some kind of strategy.
Yeah. And it's really something that I feel like a lot of us, especially like in our early 20s, you started working, you're making money, you have all this, abundance of money, especially if you're still living with your parents, you're not paying rent, you don't have a lot of a lot of bills you have to pay for. That can kind of snowball into like, okay, because I have all this money and I'm working, I can just, I want this, I can buy it. I want this, I can buy it. I want this, I can buy it. So I feel like a lot of 20-year-olds or people around my age, they have really bad money spending habits, which is something I've just been observing. I just sit back and just, especially if you see stuff on like TikTok, people are buying all these designer bags, designer things they don't necessarily need, but just because they can. So a lot of people have really bad money habits. So I just wanted to ask, like, is there some practical steps or something that you would advise like 20 something year olds to develop, more mindful spending habits?
Yeah, I love that you're bringing this up. And I think it's so important to talk about this, because when you are in that space where you are young, this is the perfect time to start getting used to setting money aside, which you might have heard the phrase, pay yourself first.
Mm-hmm.
So the pay yourself first concept is about before you start buying all these things, before you start paying all your bills and all that, all the things that you need to be responsible for, set aside a certain percent of
Yeah.
that income, of that paycheck that goes towards you, whether that's you investing in some kind of retirement plan, whether that's you putting it into some short-term, investment, some kind of savings account. And I know we're coming in from different countries, so that's going to look a little different for everybody depending where you live and what you have available in your particular country. But it's that idea at the basic core of it that you're putting that money aside so that it's almost like you're treating that money as if you're owing yourself a bill, right? You
Mm.
take care of your cell phone bill, you take care of all these other things, gas, rent, whatever. So put yourself as one of those things that you owe money to. So it's like that kind of concept, which is why we call it pay yourself first. The
Mm.
problem is we're doing it backwards, right?
Yeah.
We're spending, we're buying things, and
Yeah.
then it's like this. Well, if I have some money left over, then I'll
Then
save
I
it.
will.
No, 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 no,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
That's what you need to change now. And I got to tell you guys, one of the things that was really sad and tough for me to have conversations about with older people, and when I say older, it's people in their 40s, 50s, and sometimes 60s, is they didn't do a good job of saving. They didn't do a
Mm.
good job of investing. And they always, always, always say this: I wish I started earlier. I
Mm.
wish I started saving earlier. I could have retired earlier. I could have stopped working earlier, or I would have had more money now. And now I'm trying to play catch up. So if you are in your earlier years, you're in your 20s, it's like get into that mindset, this discipline of I'm going to set some money aside, and you're going to have to work with somebody to figure out those numbers if you need help. But just get into the habit. You want to have your short term where if something happens, right, my tires go out, or I have to get a new phone. Where's that money coming from? So if you have this short term money, or emergency fund, you have it to dip into so that you're not having to go into credit cards or into further debt or having to
Yeah.
finance it. And then you want your other savings for you being paid, that you're paying toward yourself for future retirement. So they should essentially have their own buckets depending on your goal and depending on how far in terms of time frame. So the whole point is just make sure that you're getting into that habit of paying yourself first, just as much as you're paying for bills and other things that you're
Yeah.
being responsible for.
Yeah. Earlier, you also mentioned as well when because I was watching your TED talk like
Oh,
last week, a
thank
couple of
you.
weeks ago. I was watching it and I was like, the stuff you were saying, like, it is making sense. And then you mentioned money stories, which is something that I never, like, when you explain it, it's like, oh, that makes sense. But I never heard that, like, term before, like money stories before. And then when I was thinking about it, I was like, that actually does affect, like, how I'm spending my money now. So can you just explain for like what money stories are and how do they kind of shape your financial decisions? But when you say money stories, people might be like, what's a money story?
Right. I forget sometimes, like, wait, this is a new concept, right? Because I know
Yeah.
for me, when I first heard it, I was like, what? That's a thing?
That's
So to keep it simple, a money story is a culmination of your feelings, your attitudes, your beliefs towards money, which also
mm,
involves your relationship with money. And these are all the things that have formed from your earliest memory in childhood all the way up until today. So I'll give you an example. So some money stories might be you observed your mom be the one that took care of all the bills in the
mm,
house. And so you might have also heard her complain about money, like, gosh, we have to pay these bills. I hate doing this. And then maybe you saw your dad always just go to work and come back, and you never saw him take care of anything, right? You just saw him
mm,
go to work and come back, and you might obviously know, or maybe not, depending on how old you are, that he was getting the paycheck and bringing it back. And maybe your mom was working. So there's all these little scenarios, right, that are taking place as you're growing up, and all of these things that you're observing are going into your subconscious, where like, okay, mom takes care of this. And then even the words that they might be saying, so you might hear your parents arguing about money, or you might
yeah.
even hear them say things to you like, well, money doesn't grow on trees, can you
Trees. Yeah.
afford that? You keep asking for a new
Yeah.
dress, a new
Yeah.
dress, you keep asking for new shoes, and do you have the money for that?
Mm.
We can't afford that. That's too expensive. Things
Yeah.
like that. So all those things that you're hearing and seeing become a part of our money story. And so when that happens, we're either going to develop positive
Mm.
thoughts and attitudes and beliefs towards money, or we're also going to develop negative thoughts and beliefs towards money. So all of those things have a profound effect, as I'm sure you can see, Stephanie. It's just like, whoa, I can
Yeah.
see why I have that attitude towards
Attitude.
things. I
Yeah.
can see why I am acting like this
Yeah.
because I got that from my mom. She was acting like that when she was talking about the money. She had such a horrible outlook on rich people. She said they were greedy. Well,
Mm.
maybe that's why I have a certain thought process when I think about wealthy people. So you have to stop and pause, and it starts with awareness, where you start to think, oh yeah, I remember when they would say that all the time. Like, you think about your parents, and
Yeah.
it could even be the people at school. It could be your teachers. It could even be the church. A lot of things in the church, I have a lot of rooted things with what the priest or the
Money.
pastor,
Yeah.
wherever you go, that you're going to hear different things about money. So all of those things are just downloading throughout your life and having a profound effect on how you view your own money and how you have your own relationship with money, thus affecting how you treat your money and what you do with it.
And it's something that I also think, because especially in this generation, because our parents' generation, they wouldn't necessarily have, stuff like social media. Like, do you think like social media kind of affects like the money stories of this newer generation that's kind of growing up with a lot of social media kind of shoved down their throats every second?
Yes, I think there's there's disadvantages and advantages, and I'll explain the disadvantages. There could be a lot of content that is pushing the consumerism and the
Yeah.
materialism, right? So now, because of social media, you're seeing everything. It's like
Yeah.
you can't not see things, right?
Yeah.
The information is too readily available. Everybody can have the information at their fingertips in seconds, right? So what ends up happening is now you are exposed to what everybody's doing or what you think everybody's doing, because that's a whole
Mm.
different discussion where a lot of it's fake. You have
Yes.
no idea that maybe
Yeah.
they're like in massive debt and you're thinking they're just living it up,
Mm.
buying whatever they want. And like, you don't realize that because they're not going to do content on this, that they're drowning in debt. Or maybe
Yeah.
it's they're blowing through their parents' money. You don't know. But all
Mm.
you think is that, like, well, that person looks like they're living the life. Let me go get my Louis Vuitton, or
Yeah.
whatever the case may be, or let me go get those shoes. And they're things that, you can't afford. But then there's this cycle that you can get caught up in, right? But the flip side is you also do have access to good information.
Mm.
So it's not so, if you reframe it and look like, okay, I'm aware that there are people doing that. I'm aware of what money can buy. I'm aware that there's this lifestyle that people are living, whether or not in their particular situation it's true or fake. At least there is also information out there that you can learn almost anything.
Mm.
There are so many resources now available. There are so many programs. There's so much free content to
Yeah.
take in that you can learn it, even if you don't want to, pay for a program to learn, certain things. But if you just absorb good content and at least good guidance, and then you have people that you can ask, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? Does this seem like a smart way to, spend my money or manage my money or put my money in XYZ? You also have this massive amount of information available to you, so that there is no shortage of information. It's just now more of a situation of like, hey, are you implementing it? Are you living
Mm.
it? So this is where we have to be wise and discerning of what we're taking in, and not thinking like, oh, I got to do all this and this and this, because we fall easily into the comparison trap. And
Yeah.
that gets really tough, right? It's so
Yeah.
all of us, whether you are 20 something or 99 years old, but I will say though, as you get older, you tend to care less about
Careless.
something.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
gotta say, it's nice. I'm in my late 40s, and it's like, oh my gosh, you realize you care less and less about some of these things that don't really matter. So that's a blessing. But it's really important to just be careful that you're not falling into that. Man, they everything looks great over there, because I promise you
Mm.
it usually isn't.
Yeah.
It usually isn't. So you have to just be solid in who you are, and just know that if you are doing what you need to do for you and creating a great future and learning how to build wealth, don't worry about what everybody else is doing.
Mm.
That's going to just be your detriment into financial ruin and whatnot. Plus,
Yeah.
it's just not good for you, because you're going to constantly feel bad about yourself. You're always going to feel like, gosh, I'm so behind. Everybody else looks like they're living this amazing life.
It's
It's
okay.
really tough when you start allowing these things to get into your brain, that like
Yeah.
you're so behind, and you're not good enough. That's very dangerous to start thinking that way.
Yeah, because especially because I find now a lot of people, a lot of my age, they're falling into that trap of comparison, trying to live up to this life that is for the most part like a lot of it is never real because you see a lot of the behind the scenes of these people in private jets. They're 23 in private jets, and you find out that it was a set. Because I
Right.
remember when that
I,
happened, it was a
it
whole
is a
like
set.
set,
In
like
fact, there was one here in Los
yeah,
Angeles
it's
where,
really because
yes,
it's
I
just,
saw.
it's
I
really
didn't see it,
sad.
but I know you can rent it. I was like, oh my
Yeah,
goodness, the
yeah,
lengths that people will go to create this false sense of, oh my
mm.
gosh, I'm in a private
I
jet. I'm
mean,
like,
yeah,
come on.
because that's why everything I see online, I kind of take it with a pinch of salt because you never really know once the camera is turned off, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes, and so you can kind of also fall into that trap of like, okay, I want to do this, I want to do that, but then this person, they're only 23, they have this fancy apartment in New York, they're doing this, they're doing that, but a lot of the time some people also rent because I've seen people who rent like nice cars, pretend that it's theirs, oh my god, I just got my new car. It's a Range Rover. They're 21, but you don't even have your first car, and you're looking up to that as like where I should be. When at the end of the day, they just rented that for an hour,
Right,
and
an
you're kind
hour. I
of
was gonna
comparing
say,
yourself to
by the
this.
hour.
Yeah, so it's very that's something that I always try and keep in mind, especially consuming social media and like content. I'm just be like, at the end of the day, you don't really know what's real and what's fake, especially with social media. And I also wanted to ask as well, because earlier you mentioned, you can have positive money stories and you can have negative money stories. Like, do you feel like there are any kind of signs that can show that someone is operating from a negative money story kind of background as opposed to a positive one?
Yeah, I think one of the simplest things that you can ask yourself when you're either observing it or thinking back in your mind, okay, I remember growing up when this happened. I think if you can stop and pause and ask yourself, does this have the sense of a scarcity mindset
Mm,
or an abundant mindset? That can tell you whether it's negative or positive. So, some examples of scarcity mindset is when you're seeing the story is revolving around lack, not having enough.
yeah,
Phrases like, we can't afford that, that's too expensive. Well, they just are so greedy and that's why they're doing that, or they don't care about that, or they're just out for themselves. If you're hearing phrases like that, and if there's a negative charge to it, like the way that I just said it, there's a lot of jealousy behind that too, but there's a lot of reflection of lack, and we don't
mm,
have that. So there's bitterness. If you're
yeah,
feeling that sense, I think it's really important to trust your gut feeling and your intuition, and what does it sound like it's leaning towards. That's going to tell you, like, yeah, this is probably not a good story. This is probably a
yeah,
negative story. And then you can ask yourself, is that what you want to believe? Do you want to keep
mm,
owning that story? Because you always have the choice to say, that's not mine anymore. I might have
yeah,
grown up with it. I might have heard that, even if it came from my mom or my dad or somebody that I love. That's okay. I'm not making it wrong. I'm not blaming them. That's just what they knew at that time. But I
mm,
have a choice to decide what I want to believe in, because you always will
yeah,
have the choice and decision whether you want to continue down the same road that they were leading you down, or you're going to ask yourself, I want to go in a different direction. So the opposite of that would be an abundance mindset. An abundance mindset would sound like, yes, we are investing in these good pieces of clothing because they're high quality. It might be a
yeah,
little bit more expensive, but it's going to last longer. Or, hey, you know what? we want to take this family vacation because we really believe in the value of family, and we want to have these memories for a really, really long time. So there's positive ways that you're going to see that money is spoken about. Or here's another one that's really simple. So let's say for bills, right? Bills is an easy one that most people complain about, right? So
Yeah.
you can either complain about like, oh, these bills, I hate them, they can't paying for them, right? Or you can look at it the other way and say, like, yeah, you know what? I'm grateful for these bills. They
Mm.
have afforded me to be able to have a phone so I can contact people anywhere in the world. I'm able to watch videos to get some education and learn some things about, new recipes that I want to try. These bills afford me to have lights on and
Mm.
electricity in the house and clean running water. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I have taxes to pay because it takes care of where I live, and it puts it back into the community. But not only that, it tells me that I'm making money. I'm making income,
Mm.
because if I was making income, then that means I'm paying taxes. So do you see the difference?
Yeah.
It's the attitude. It's how we want to approach these things that are happening, because the other thing that ends up happening too is if we continue to go down this negative path and this scarcity mindset and hold on to those stories that really you can just feel it, right? When I say it, the negative stuff, don't you just kind of feel like
You feel,
it's
yeah,
heavy? It's
heavy, yeah,
heavy,
kind of
right?
weighing you, yeah.
Right. So if think about like, I can think of some people in my mind, like when they constantly complain about money, you
Mm.
start to get this ick around them, right? You don't want to be
Yeah,
around their
yeah,
negative
yeah,
energy. It's just because
yeah,
it's so heavy, right? And they have like a very low frequency. So if you
yeah.
get into studying vibrational frequencies, there's like this chart, there's like this funnel, and it starts like at 800. It's at the top, it's like 800, and then it goes down to like 300. And it's
Mm.
almost like a measuring stick of the energy and the frequencies. So, for example, like anger, jealousy, all that is like towards the bottom, and then
Mm.
if you go higher, you're going to be at love and enlightenment and
Mm.
joy.
Positive,
So that's at the
yeah.
higher end. So this is why you hear things like, high vibe. Why do you think you feel good around it? If you're saying
Mm.
things like, oh yeah, I'm really grateful for this because yeah, we have bills, but I'm able to take care of, I have a great life. I'm able to have a sustainable lifestyle. I'm able to
Yeah.
eat good food. I'm not scraping by. I am actually living a pretty comfortable lifestyle. And then you hear people that are speaking in that level where they're grateful. That is at a very high frequency. This is why you want to be around it. It feels good. So you
Yeah.
have the choice of whether you want to operate at a very, very low level where there's anger and jealousy and shame, or you can choose to speak and act and embrace feeling, I feel grateful, I have joy, I have love. And it's a very different feeling. And
Mm.
if you even just look at that, you always have the decision and the choice to say, how do I want to show up today? How do I want to talk
Yeah.
about money? How do I want to have a relationship with my money? Do I want to have a really negative, low, crappy feeling one? Or do I want to have a really
Mm.
good, positive, high vibe feeling one?
Yeah. And I know you mentioned like trying to switch your mindset from, a more negative one to more like abundance, but are there any other tips that you can give to try and kind of change that negative money story instead of, just dwelling on that?
Yeah, I think I love this one. It's actually pretty simple. I think one of the exercises that you can do that is simple is take a look how you're treating your physical money. So whether
Mm.
that is you have paper bills, some people still carry cash. So if you
Yeah.
have paper bills or coins, or even if you only have credit cards, take a look at your wallet. And the reason why I
Mm.
want you to do that is to look at it and see, do you just stuff the paper bills? Like, is it messy or is it neatly folded? Are your credit cards like neatly lined up inside the parts where you can put credit cards in? Is it stuffed with old receipts and just shoved paper here and there?
Mhm.
How is that looking? And the reason why that's important is because it's the house for your money.
Yeah.
And if the house is messy, you're also signaling out there that, like, I don't care about my money. I don't care about
Mm.
it. It's kind of like if you go into your home or your room. Is it nice and neat? Are you taking care of the things that you own? Or you
Yeah.
just throw things and it's a total mess, and it because that is a reflection of you, if you care or not about it. And so when I first learned about this, I remember thinking like, oh my goodness, I ended up buying a new wallet. No, I ended up getting a gift. Somebody gave me, thankfully it was a gift. Somebody gave me a Coach wallet because the one I had before it, Stephanie, it was terrible. It was like this ugly pouch. It wasn't even a
Oh,
wallet. I just thought to myself like, this is good enough. I'll just put
it'll
the
do.
money
Yeah.
in. It was terrible. It was so terrible. I'm trying to look for an example if there's one around me. But it was like those pouches where you would put like the makeup and just pull the zipper.
Mm,
It wasn't even really a wallet. And I remember I'm laughing now, like, gosh, that's embarrassing. And then I remember getting so convicted, thinking like, that is telling the universe that I don't care about my money. So I
yeah.
immediately started like throwing out receipts. I started like stacking like the credit cards neatly. I started, if I ever had cash, I would fold it nice and neat. I had all the bills
Mm,
facing the same way, the same direction, and folding it neatly. And another thing that I also did was also always had $100 bill folded inside the wallet, and I never spend it because having that, it's in true alignment. If I say, if I say an affirmation is like, I always have money, which
yeah.
actually is true. Because sometimes people may feel like, well, I don't always have money. But yeah, if you put that in your wallet and never spend it, you do
You.
always have money. So
Yeah.
there's little things like that. And I think so some homework that you all can do out there is to take a look at your wallet and even
Hmm.
take a look at like, is it all messed up? Is the zipper busted? Is the leather falling apart? So if that's the case, this is the one time I'm going to give you permission to go buy a nice high quality wallet. Buy
Yeah.
something that you can, that's within your budget, that you can, even if it stretches you a little, because that's actually going into it's actually taking you into that direction of you caring about your money. And when you care about your
Mm,
money, you're caring about your relationship with money, and you're saying that, hey, I take care of this. Well, I'm welcoming more of it, more wealth into my life, so that
yeah.
I'm actually demonstrating the things that it needs to show that, hey, I care about it. I am taking care of it. Because there's this, there's also the, whether you are familiar with law of attraction or, law of, vibrational frequency, you're going to attract that of which you are being. So if
Mm,
you're being somebody that doesn't care, money's going to look at you and go like, well, apparently you don't care, so you don't need me. And so that becomes like an energy block. So I would say that would be a great exercise to do, to just check
yeah.
yourself and see what does your money look like physically, and what are you housing it in right now? Is it a busted wallet
Mm,
or purse? And if it is, this is the time to change that, and replace that, and start being really, really neat in how you're organizing the things in your wallet.
yeah. Yeah, because I'm guilty of that. I'm not gonna show anyone
I'm
my
sure we all
purses
have
like
been.
right now.
Sure for that.
Very beat up. So I'm gonna get myself a
Yeah,
nice fresh one.
get a new one.
And
Get a nice,
yeah.
pretty one that you deserve, and your money deserves.
A lot of people in their 20s, they don't seem to know how to be financially literate. I saw a post. Someone was working. She was working in McDonald's, I think, and she was just like asking people like, "How are you guys like 19, 20, 20 in your early 20s? Like, how are you guys affording to buy all these like luxurious items and like flaunt them?" And I went into the comments, and a lot of people were saying they're heavily in debt. And I was like, a lot of the time they're very Klarna. They use Klarna to pay for loads of stuff. They're heavily in debt, not
Yeah.
knowing that Klarna also affects your credit score and all that kind of stuff. I feel like financial literacy is not a thing that a lot of people tend to think about. They don't have rainy day funds. They don't have emergency savings. Everything is just, if it were to all go down now, they're going to be just like screwed. So I wanted to ask, why do you think like financial literacy in your 20s is like very important? Because I know it's very important, but I just wanted to ask as well, like, why do you think it's important?
It's massively crucial. I
Mm,
think because several reasons. Well, I'll start with, first off, you're young, and this is the time where you're now working, hopefully working, getting income and whatnot. And so this is that critical moment where you're developing the foundation of how you treat your money, how you
Yeah.
manage personal finance, how you start investing. The other challenge is because you're young, and if you don't take advantage of investing, there's this concept of compounding interest, right? So if you start
Mm.
investing in, investments, anything that's, in the market, there's a rate of return that's not just the kind of that's in the savings account where it barely grows. If you don't take advantage of that, you're never going to get that time back. Time is the one
Yeah.
thing that we cannot make more of. And so when you start putting money into something that has compounding interest, you're taking advantage of those that period of time where it just grows on top of itself. So if you're trying to start at 40 and you decide to start
Mm.
adulting when you're 30, you've already lost out on all that time. And I'm telling
Yeah.
you, like I said in the beginning of our talk, I said there are so many people when I was a financial advisor that said to me that were in their 40s and 50s and 60s that said, man, I wish I did better. I wish I saved
Yeah.
earlier. I wish I started earlier. And then they would tell me, Jen, do you work with younger people? I said, yeah, all the time. They like, tell them about me, tell them to start now. And it was like I would always say things like, man, I wish I could just get you all in one room, and then you
Mm.
guys tell these young people what to do because you are in so much regret. And it
Yeah.
was sad because I would tell these people that were in their 40s, 50s, 60s that, hey, you know what, don't be blaming yourself right now. Okay, it's done, it's done. All we can do
Mm.
now is figure out what is the best thing that we can do with what you have right now. And unfortunately, the reality was they either had to keep working, they couldn't
Mm.
retire as early as they wanted to. They had to figure out a way to dramatically change and adjust their lifestyle
Yeah.
because they were making a certain amount of money, and either their investments were this is how bad it was. Some of their investments were so low that in terms of the balance, and if they said, well, what if I start taking income now, and I'm like, this is only going to give you 2,000 a year, a
Mm.
year, $2,000 a
Yeah.
year.
A
So
year.
it would be examples like that, and they're like, I'm like, yeah, that's just not going to work because the balance
Mm.
is there's not enough in there, because there's a way for us to look at, like, what you could realistically expect if you were to start withdrawing the money from the account when you retire, because when you retire you're not working anymore.
Yeah.
So the idea is that you're supposed to stop working, and then the money is
And
supposed to start
relax. Yeah.
paying you to replace the paycheck that you were getting at the job you were retiring from.
Mm.
But if you start too late, you didn't give yourself the opportunity to take advantage of the compounding interest to make those accounts grow. So that's what I'm
Mm.
saying. So the reason why it's so important to start early is because of the compounding interest. So people are missing out. Here's the other thing too. All this stuff is just a reflection. And I'm okay. So I'll go back to this idea, but all that stuff, I'm not saying it's bad. It's not
Mm.
totally bad, but some of y'all getting out of control. If you're like constantly financing three things through Affirm and Klarna and PayPal, and you can't
Mm.
pay for the whole thing, don't freaking get it. Stop thinking
Yeah.
that I can make these little payments. You shouldn't even buy the next thing. Start paying that
Yeah.
other stuff down, because now you're paying for all this stuff that's totally depreciating. It's not like
Mm.
it has a lot of value unless you're buying some real high end thing that you could probably resell. Most of the time, that's not the case.
Let's
It's
know. Yeah.
wasted. It's wasted.
Yeah.
And so it's not gaining any compounding interest. You're not building anything from it. And then it's going to become something like you don't want anymore. You're going to give away. And then you have also introduced the whole idea of opportunity loss. What did it
Mm.
cost you? That money, let's just say it's $1,000 bag. There's an opportunity cost and loss, because that $1,000 that you spent on the bag could have been $1,000 you could have spent on paying down that debt, or
Yeah.
it could have been $1,000 that you invested. That's the
Yeah.
opportunity loss. And so that's something that we should take a look at if we're getting all crazy about buying this next thing. Stop thinking that you can finance it, because as Stephanie said,
Mm.
it does affect your credit, because it becomes this
Yeah.
thing that alerts the credit bureaus, and it says like, hey, this person's financing something. It shows up. but it does go on your credit. It does show up. And
Yeah.
so, it's being tracked. So you may not even know that you're creating all these dings in your credit because you're
Mm-hmm.
financing every little thing that you see on Instagram and
Yeah.
TikTok. So the other thing I will add is that please don't think that I think that it's not a good thing to buy things, because I
Mm.
do truly believe that there is a time, like we just talked about, get yourself a nice wallet. But it's where it takes a wrong turn is when you're allowing. I don't think it's bad to own nice things. I think it becomes dangerous when those things start to own you,
Yeah.
and now you're getting caught up in it. But there is this balance, right, where you have to decide or be aware that, hey, am I getting this because I like nice things, I can enjoy it, I need it, and I can be financially responsible if I choose to spend money to get this? Or are you just swiping and shop now and just getting it, and you're getting caught up? you know that's something you have to pay attention to. And I'll leave you with a story. Is There was a friend of mine who was doing this, and she was not she's in her 40s, okay, so this is even worse. And she would come to me after, oh, I just bought all this stuff, I don't know why I did it again. And then we had just worked out a plan. My goodness,
Mm.
we just worked out a plan. I said, okay, pay this stuff off first, do this. Okay, well, what you got, then you start having to get creative, right? You have to start organizing, like, okay, this stuff, do this first, okay, then we'll handle this, because it's now got into a complicated situation, right?
Mm.
She comes back and she's like, I racked up all the debt again
Oh.
after paying some stuff. And I was just like, just sort of go, what are you doing? Why are you
Yeah.
doing this? Why are you doing this? And so we hadn't worked through her money stories. So that's why the money stories is important.
Mm.
So here she is again, racking up all the debt. And then she was like, well, I think I have to. I'm like, yeah, you better return some of it. I mean, return all of it if you can, because she started having this guilt. So she ended up having to go back to all of these department stores and other places. And then she even had like 3 gym memberships. I was like, goodness
Wow.
gracious, just work out at one, like you can't be at all 3 at the same time. But it gets out of control. It really does.
Mm.
And the saddest part is seeing, it's important to not beat yourself up,
Yeah.
but if you are getting out of control, like you almost need somebody to metaphorically like slap you around and be like,
Stop. Yeah.
stop it. This is just getting out of control, because like you're hurting yourself. So yeah, there's just like so many things I'm recalling over the years when I've seen people, finance things and get out of
Mm.
control.
Yeah. Even just lack of information too, as well, because a lot of people don't know. Because it's even funny because last week I was just explaining like to my friend like how credit works and like how Klarna, all that stuff like that is affecting your credit score, your credit rating, and you're not going to know till down the line when you want to do something important like a mortgage or
Yeah.
you want to get a loan, and now you're stuck and you didn't know all those stuff from Klarna is they've been eating at your credit. So I feel like information too. A lot of people they just don't know. They don't think that they don't have this information on hand, and that's something as well that social media is very helpful because I try and use my social media just to research information because social media a lot of the time it's free, the amount of knowledge you can get online. So I just wanted to ask as well, like a lot of people, if you don't know just where to start on how to educate yourself on money and finances, like where can you begin if you just don't know where to start at all?
I think I think identifying some of the accounts that you should follow. I can't even think of some of them because I don't follow a lot of personal finance accounts online. But for those of you who do, I think it's important to identify some personal finance people that putting out really great content that you can learn
Mm,
from. And I think you need to do that research on your own, because there's going to be people that you can connect with, and there's going to be people that, like, you don't either like their style, you don't like their approach.
yeah.
So I think it's important to follow a few accounts that you feel that the content is very relevant. You find that it's helpful. Look at the comments and see, hey, is it looking like there's some good interaction and engagement? Does it look like there's positive responses to the information? Even like on YouTube, There's
Mm.
so many different channels that have great personal finance content to absorb. And I think especially if you can even narrow it down, I would even go as far as like, personal finance for 20 somethings.
Mm.
Get that specific, because then the content will be more tailored to your age demographic, because you don't necessarily want to hear the information that somebody in their 50s, they're in a completely different world,
Yeah.
right? This is somebody that's trying to prepare for maybe 10 to 15 more years left of working, where you as a 20 something, somebody that's younger, needs to hear, what is it that I need to do now? Don't be talking about some high level strategy yet. Like I need the basics of where to start. So look for channels and content and creators who are putting out content specific to your age group and your demographic, because then it'll be more relevant and it's something that you can start learning from. And then
Mm.
other than that, start implementing some things that could help you that maybe you're not doing yet. So maybe if it's
Mm.
just simply saving, maybe some of you, it may be just getting out of debt,
Mm.
simply just stopping the spending. Like sometimes you just got to really slow it down and make it simple. And before you even start worrying about like, well, I'm going to start doing this and I want to buy a house. And I'm so glad you brought up the thing about credit, because a lot of you might want to buy a house. So a lot of you might want to upgrade where you live. A lot of you might want to move out.
Mm.
It all is going to be dependent if your credit's good, and
Yeah.
if your stuff is being inundated with all this stuff that you haven't paid off, you're hurting yourself. You're hurting your
Mm.
future potential of being able to move to a better place or buy
Mm.
a car if you need it. Like credit is so important. And here's the thing, if you haven't looked up your credit report or your history, that is somewhere to start too,
Yeah.
because if a lot of you might not even know your score, and that's dangerous. The last thing you want to do is look that up right before you want to buy something,
Yeah.
because you're not going to have the time to fix it. You're going
Yeah.
to sometimes need 3 to 6 months to a year, depending on how bad it
It
is.
is. Yeah.
You're going to, let's say for example, you want to buy a car or a house or something like that. They're going to look at your credit, and if there's so many things that need to be removed or fixed, or you need to pay down debt, you're not going to be able to do that in 30 days. Most
Mm.
of the time it's going to take months to a year at minimum. So you have to be intentionally aware to start fixing that now. And in order to know what you're dealing with, you got to get that report. You got to know where you stand in order for you to start fixing it. Well, we need to know where you're starting from now. Same thing with your personal finance. Some of you might not even know what the heck is going on. You just get the paycheck and spend it.
Yeah.
Have you ever created a budget? Have you created like this breakdown of like, okay, this is how much goes to these bills. This is how much I need to start putting towards paying myself first. Have you worked out a plan to know where the money is to be going?
Yeah.
So it's so important that you create a plan, so that
Yes.
you're not putting yourself in these situations where you're panicking and wondering like, oh my gosh, my phone's gonna get shut off because I didn't pay it yet, or oh my gosh, my car. I'm telling you all these things that people tell me like, oh my gosh,
Mm.
my car. I'm behind 2 months, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
what the hell's going on here? And then when I look at what they were spending it on, it's always two biggest things people are spending their money on: clothes at stores and food going
Food.
out.
Yes.
Hands down.
Yeah.
I'm like, why are you buying stuff?
Mm.
So be aware of how you're spending your money, and not just being really haphazard about it, because do you want to constantly be in that state where you're like panicking, you're worried that you can't pay for stuff? Like that
Mm.
isn't a way to live. That's
Yeah.
constantly putting you in this state of chaos.
Mm. Yeah. This has been a very enlightening discussion because it's been something that I've been wanting to talk about for the longest of time. So I'm happy that I found you to come on and just talk about it because you know what you're talking about. You've had experience, you've dealt with people, you know stories, you know how to kind of explain it. You kind of work with younger people as well. So before we end, I just wanted to ask, is there just one thing that you would say to just the younger one, just one tip that you would give them out of the whole episode to just implement it to their life starting from right now?
I would say take advantage of this opportunity while you're young.
Mm.
And really start taking a look at your mindset and your approach and ask yourself, do you really want to build wealth? And if the answer is yes, the next question I want you to ask yourself is, am I living in such a way that's moving me towards that or away from
Mm,
that? And that's going to help you understand if you need to change certain habits that you're doing today.
yeah. It's very, very powerful. I feel like some people kind of they get this thing in the mind as, oh, I want to be rich, that I want to have all this money. But am I actively taking steps to get there, or am I hindering myself from, getting there? So
Right.
it's been very, very enlightening. Because all the stuff you were saying, it is something that we need to start implementing into our lives, especially when we're younger. You're going to reach a point where you're like, I wish I started earlier. So just even having the knowledge now, you can just start. It's never too late. Just start, at least just start now. You know you're having rent is coming up, but you want to buy the Marc Jacobs toe. Please just look at what's more important right now, because I've seen a lot of stories of people who they're behind on their rent. They've been kicked out, but they have the latest designer stuff. That's not going to give you a place to sleep
Oh my
at
goodness.
the end of the day. It's
Sell
not going to pay your
sell the
bills
bag and
at the end
get a
of
roof
the
over your head. Like
yeah.
priorities, people, priorities.
Yeah, priorities. Absolutely enjoyed this episode. It's been
Thank you.
amazing. So I'm just gonna let you just highlight anything you want to highlight, anything you have coming up, or your social media handles you want to share as well.
Thank you. Yeah, this has been so wonderful, Stephanie. I've had so much fun with you on this topic. It's near and dear to me because of all the stories I have heard from people who wish
Mm,
they started younger. But if you want to connect with me, you can find me and follow me on Instagram at Jen Money Coach, Jen Money Coach. You can also go to my site, jenmoneycoach.com. And if you're interested in reading one of my latest books, it's called The Creative Code, A Creative Professional's Way to Happiness, Wealth, and Joy. You can find that on Amazon or just go to my website for more information.
mm. Yeah, and I also have all of those linked as well, so it can be easier. You just go to the description, click the link, and it should take you straight there. So that has been today's episode of 20s Talks, the Unspoken Truth. I hope you guys at least learned one thing, just even if it's one thing you took away from this to implement into your life. Just I hope it's been a very enlightening discussion for you guys, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Don't forget to follow the show so you don't miss any new episodes, and catch you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.